This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, so we're joined today by Kerri Brooks, and Kerri is teaching in the Phoenix Talent School District, but did edTPA a few years back. And thank you for coming together with us today.
Absolutely.
One of the reasons that we reached out to you was because of your work and the fact that you also did your edTPA in a site-based classroom. So just to kind of lay the foundation for that, could you describe your work in the site-based classroom and perhaps some of the goals you set for your students?
Yeah, so my current classroom is very similar to the classroom that I did my edTPA in. And I'm teaching life skills, functional academics, behavior skills, social skills, those sorts of things. The students that I work with have multiple and severe disabilities. Their exceptionalities impact them in a way that really limits their access to the general education curriculum. And so I'm modifying a lot of general education standards to meet the needs of my students. And when I was doing my edTPA, I was working in a site-based classroom in Jacksonville. I had one focus learner that was on the autism spectrum and was mostly verbal, but a lot of the students that I work with are nonverbal or have communication needs as well. So trying to do my edTPA and working with a student that has a high level of specialized needs was challenging, but was also, it really allowed me the opportunity to analyze my own teaching and see where I was being successful and where I really needed to grow. So
it's interesting when you talk about the verbal, nonverbal, and we talk in edTPA about the communication skill. And maybe just jumping back to your memory, you had a verbal student, but was it difficult for you to identify a communication skill, and what might our current students think about?
So it was really important for me to distinguish between receptive communication and expressive communication. So receptive is when they're understanding you talking to them. And expressive communication is being able to verbally output or communicate in one form or another, either through picture exchange or an augmentative communication device. That's the expressive communication. I don't remember if I focused more on the receptive language of the student or the expressive, but I remember addressing both of them because they were both really important in the process of teaching. So
great, thank you. And you kind of hinted at this when you talked a moment ago about sort of what that process, the edTPA, sort of taught you as you reflected back. So I want to explore that a little bit more as you remember back to your edTPA days. Were there some key points that you believe made that experience valuable to you as a pre-service professional and beyond?
Yeah. So as uncomfortable as it is to watch myself teach virtually or through the lens of a camera, it provided me with the opportunity to really analyze what I was doing and to see where something I noticed was that I was unintentionally prompting by my body language. And so if you aren't aware when you're just teaching side by side to a student, the nice part is that when you watch it back, you're able to see what you're doing that is prompting the student, even if it's unintentional or you're unaware of it in the moment. And it provided me with the opportunity to then reflect on that and to eliminate those nonverbal or body language prompts that I was trying not to do because I was over prompting at that point. So it's really interesting to think about the process of the edTPA and how stressful it was, but I still use what I learned in my edTPA today and in my teaching. And I did my edTPA back in 2018, 2019 school year. So it's been a little bit since I've done the process, but I do still think about the things that I learned in that process, mostly by analyzing the video and watching myself teach, as uncomfortable as it is. It was a good learning process.
I just to piggyback on that, you could take your scores and you could look at your scores in that first year or two of teaching and say, okay, in some of these rubrics, I scored 2s. That right then tells me, should I consider those for my professional goal areas, right?
Yeah.
So we could pull that out.
And that's part of, when you become a teacher, you have teacher goals, student achievement goals, as well as professional development goals. And, seeing the areas of growth from the scores of edTPA would be a great way to really push yourself into growing as a teacher for those goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Knowing the edTPA does require that you are demonstrating that you can plan, teach, and analyze assessment. How would you advise pre-service teachers to approach this project in a site-based classroom with a single focus learner?
I think that choosing your focus learner is going to be the most important part, is making sure that you have somebody that is able to show their learning in a way that somebody else who's from the outside is also going to be able to see that they're learning whatever the goal is. And aligning it with their IEP goals is just helping you as a teacher move forward and helping them meet their goals. And it's a process, and knowing that it takes a lot of time to do the planning, the instruction, and the assessment, and realizing that as a teacher, that's something that you do all the time, is really, it's a valuable thing. And I don't know if I addressed all of it. So if you want to say the question again.
I think I see what you're saying is you want to make sure your choice of student is going to be effective for an outside perspective. The people looking at your portfolio aren't going to know the ins and outs of this student. They're only going to see what you're able to give them. So you want to be able to have something you can really give. I guess I also want to pursue what you were saying earlier about how you have to significantly modify and accommodate in a site-based classroom. And yeah, you have a standard, but then what are you thinking as you start to think about this is the grade level, this is the standard, and this is my student? Can you give us some examples of some of the things that you think about when you're making those modifications?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that I really focus on is, where do I want them to be? So what's the end goal? And then doing backwards chaining, the Vygotsky's gradual release model, and making sure that they are showing independence, but also that you are providing them with the support that they need in order for them to show independence. And then that backwards chaining is so important, so that you know where they're going, and then how will they get there, and providing them with the supports that they need in order to get there, and aligning that with the standards. And also, the nice part is that a lot of IEP goals are aligned to state standards. And so choosing an IEP goal as your focused learners or your edTPA project is really just going to put you on that trajectory of being successful.
Good. So use the resources that are already in play here.
Absolutely. Yeah. Don't recreate the wheel. It's, things are there in place to help support you, and, you just have to be able to access them.
So you've talked about the how to do that. And that's where I want to go next is, are there some key instructional strategies that you use in a site-based classroom that you are finding more success with than others?
Yeah. Something that I felt was really helpful was in doing my edTPA was looking at the service page and the accommodations of the student's IEP, and seeing what accommodations are on there. Allowing ample processing time, providing simplified instructions, repeating instructions, visuals. Visuals were huge with the student that I worked with, and providing him with a way of seeing what the expectation was instead of just hearing or reading, because a lot of students don't process that way. And so I encourage people who are doing their edTPA is to look at the service summary page and the accommodations that are on there, because that's going to help you decide what it is that they need in order to be successful in the lessons that you're teaching them.
Yeah, great. Again, use the resources that are right there in front of you.
Yep. Yeah.
And then your own natural go-tos. Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I guess just some general advice. I always like to end these interviews with, what general advice would you give people for, moving through this process in such a way that it becomes something that is valuable as you've described it?
Yeah. For me, it was daunting because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of writing. It's a lot of analyzing and self-reflection. And for me, what was really important was setting aside time. I did an hour a day. I made sure that it didn't matter what day of the week it was, 1 hour of typing. And oftentimes I would then get into a flow and it would continue and it'd be longer. But providing myself with that time and making sure that I stuck to it was the only way that I got it done. Also, I saved everything. I had a binder of things, of papers, and because you're going to need to show your students' progress over those, 3 to 5 lessons, and being able to see that the focus learner is actually making the progress that you hope for. So save everything, schedule time to do the writing, and also be gentle on yourself. You're a learner. You're learning just as much as your focus learner is learning. And
so you're
This
right.
meeting is
It's hard.
recorded.
It's really hard for us to be gracious with ourselves. But it's like, I don't know, we might expect more than we should, but we're just trying to be novice teachers who demonstrate we're ready to go.
Right. And I think that one of the best parts of the learning experience of edTPA was being able to show that I was learning just as much as my focus learner was learning. And it's okay to say in the commentary, I did this, but I would do it differently next time, and to explain how you would do it differently next time, because that shows that you are reflecting on your teaching, and that's what whoever is grading it wants to see.
Great. You're absolutely right. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Take care.
Yeah, you're absolutely welcome. I'm glad I could help.
Yeah.